Knicks fans. That's it. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macker with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. As you know, hey, listen, emergency podcast, right? Break up the Knicks. Man, it's a good thing it's only 10 teams in the play-in or in the playoffs or in the postseason, whatever you want to call it. Because if it were 11, Benjy, let me introduce our guest, Benjy Ritholtz. Hello, Ben. How are you?
Hey, John. I'm doing great. How you doing?
What do you think? The Knicks would be co-favorites with the Bucks and maybe the Suns, and I don't know if they were to get into this dance. The rest of the league should be really thankful.
They're on their way. Look, they're playing really good ball at although irrelevant time. They're playing teams that care, right? That's the thing. They're not playing teams,
including Detroit, by the way.
No, Detroit's good right now. Yeah, Detroit's playing good basketball.
They've been good.
And they're beating teams that are trying to win. So it's not like an end of season garbage. It's no, they're just playing good basketball.
Yeah. I don't think we've ever talked about this before. Are you one of these people that I shouldn't say it like that because that derides the people who have this opinion, and it's a valid opinion. Are you one of the folks that laments the upsetting the tanking standings?
No, but I recognize that I might be wrong.
Me too.
I can't root for it. I can't accept it. I think the incentive structure is a disgrace and a black mark on the league. That you have 5 or 6 teams that are purposely trying to lose. It goes against everything that I believe in, in competitive sports. So I will never root for it. Also, we've seen enough of it in 10, 15 years of watching Knicks basketball. I'd much rather watch what we're watching now and see development and see players growing before our eyes and hoping that carries over more than a increase in draft lottery equity, whatever you want to say. But I recognize that I might be wrong and short-sighted, but that is how I feel.
Yeah, but that recognition, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but briefly on this, I do think it's an interesting discussion that I never feel like I have correctly. Which sounds like we're of the same mind there. It's you only feel like you're wrong. The only reason you feel that way is because inevitably some team will get the superstar player with whatever pick they wind up getting. But there now needs to be a significant, not a decent amount of luck involved because if you're the Rockets and you're going to finish with the 3rd worst record, guess what? It's not crazy that you're going to get the 6th pick anymore. Which, imagine if you're the Rockets and you went through this shit show of a season watching Kevin Porter fucking Jr. jack up God knows what shots he's putting up, and you, and you wind up with the 6th pick in the draft, which is not inconceivable at all, And then if you get the 1st or 2nd or 3rd pick, you got to hope you draft the right guy, which is you look every year and it's someone in one of those top selections winds up with Marvin Bagley, or I don't know why I feel bad that that's the name that came to my mind, but someone of that ilk. So, I don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, and you go through the historical record as we all have and look at how tanking teams have done, whether they succeeded. And I think it's complex, but I do feel like if we're being 100% honest, you do need that player. And,
of course.
And it's the best way to get it. It really does come down to that. And again, I recognize it intellectually, but everything else in me tells me that this is more valuable. And I it's a dissonance for me. I'm not convinced that I'm right, but I can tell you that I'm a much happier person, basketball analyst, watching what we're watching now than I would be if we were just, I don't even know what tanking would look like. I guess shutting down half the roster and playing, I don't know, Julius 40 minutes a game, maybe, but I don't know.
Oh, man, I could go in a number of different directions after that. Here's the one I'm going to pick. You said you're not convinced that you're right. Someone who I think is convinced that they're right. Decent amount of the time. He's the head coach of the New York Knicks. As you may have heard, even though it was aimed at me, basically calling me an idiot, I adored it because of reasons that have nothing to do with Thibs or, quite frankly, basketball. Those are my own issues. The reason I like it is because there are a lot of people with a lot of takes who probably don't know as much as Tom Thibodeau. I'm just going to say, I think are one of the exceptions.
No,
you do.
That's too kind, but thank you.
It's what I believe. Again, I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of stuff, especially since I don't watch the film on you 3 times, Benji. No, but I what you're talking. I mean, look, anybody who sees your Twitter thread or anything like that knows what you're looking for. When you heard Thibs' comments after the game, were you offended by that? Were you bothered by it? I mean, just what was your takeaway?
No, I didn't have much of a takeaway. He's an old school guy. You
might say that,
a very stubborn guy. I don't expect him to look at Twitter one way or another. I hope he's not looking at it. I hope he's not gaining anything from it. I think the same for the players. Like, and I know they all see everything.
RJ said as much. He's like, he said it without saying it. He's like, that's part of modern life and part of being an athlete in today's day and age. But like, you need to be mentally strong enough to ignore that stuff and just do your own thing. And like, you can look at it, engage with it. I hope you're not learning from it. Like, I think I have some good things to say, but if I were coaching the New York Knicks, I would say them very differently than I do on Twitter. Like it's just the kind of the medium and what it is. Like Thibs should, like whether what he said was like in the best taste or like, kind of, it's like the most boomer thing ever. Like that's Thibs, and like, it is what it is. And we all knew who he was when he came. We all knew who he was last year, and we all knew who he is. We all know who he is this year. So it didn't change my perspective or opinion of him or anything like that. I didn't take much from it at all. It just kind of is who he is. I'm with you, but I just wanted to ask because it's been something of a hot button issue. And I'm very pleased with your response.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the players because there's some good stuff going on with this team right now. I feel like the appropriate place to start is with Immanuel Quickley, but I'm going to hold off on that for a second just because I want to make sure we get in an RJ discussion here. And that is selfishly on my part because I have a newsletter coming out on Wednesday when this podcast. Wait, no, what's today? I've lost track of time. What is today? Is today Tuesday? Okay. So the newsletter is coming out tomorrow on Wednesday or today as you're listening to this. And it's in regards to RJ and his contract extension and his potential contract extension, which does not need to be reached this summer. And if you look back through history, this is probably an overgeneralization, but I would say that players that are in RJ's caliber in terms of what they've done through 3 years don't always get the extent like that. It's not always agreed to after 3 years. Sometimes it is. And where I've kind of come down on this at this point, and I want your take on this and then we'll expand upon it, is like, at this point, I feel like we've now seen, this is 3 months. We know like the driving, the getting the shots at the rim, the offensive rebounds that come from that, the getting to the line, he's shooting 72% from the lines. Like, that's not bad. Like making the easy pass most of the time, occasionally making the hard pass. Like all that stuff is there. I don't think any of that's going anywhere. There is still no pull-up game to speak of. For me, that's kind of become my, like, is he definitely going to be worth the max? Or is he going to, be like a guy you give the max to? But like at the end of the day, I'm starting to lean more towards like, look, whether he's a max guy or not a max guy, he's shown enough that I am comfortable enough giving him that money. So that we'll start there. We'll go forward.
Yeah. I am not convinced he's a max guy. But I also don't, there's like what you need to give him and what he means to the franchise and kind of investing in a character and a player that you like, that you drafted third, especially in the context of this franchise and the amount of players they have not signed after their rookie deal. And that all goes into this decision. I think they're going to sign him. And it's going to be probably a negotiation towards the top of that range as to what he gets.
Do you think they will sign him this summer if you had to place your betting chip?
I think there will be urgency to do this, to move the ball forward in a sense. Okay. Now, I don't have any, as you know, I have no reporting. I haven't spoken to anybody, but it seems like the way the coaching staff has adjusted and he has the ball, and the way he's being kind of propped up, I think, even by like social media, the franchise, like there is a concerted effort here to like, this is the face of our team.
Yeah.
And maybe that has to do with Julius's kind of decline. But also I think they're invested in him. I do. And rightfully so. Now, whether I haven't read your newsletter yet. I wonder if a name that you consider talked about is Andrew Wiggins.
He is the primary name that is featured in the piece.
Right. So I think there are a lot of similarities. I've looked at the numbers. I know Wiggins is certainly a better finisher at the rim than RJ was, ever has been. Andrew Wiggins' shot selection is worse. He took a lot of long twos his whole career in Minnesota. And there was the biggest thing with Wiggins is there was a question as to his drive and his motivation and whether he can be the face of a franchise in that sense, which RJ doesn't have. And that all factors in. But, in terms of a inefficient wing player, Canadian, there are a lot of similarities to speak of, and Wiggins got the max. And I don't think he's played. I mean, they moved him, right? Because he didn't play up to it. And he was an albatross.
I know they got the guy that they wanted to get for him, but they also gave up a pretty good draft pick to get that guy.
And I know New York Knicks fans are not going to be happy hearing those two names juxtaposed, but the reality is what it is in terms of the numbers.
Benji, I want to stop you for a second. They don't need to be happy. This isn't us being like, oh, RJ Barrett and Andrew Wiggins. It's our opinion that these two players should be discussed in the same breath after their third years. Just go look up the numbers.
Right.
All you have to do is go. And I'm not even talking about like one or two number. Like, okay, here's something. Andrew Wiggins was getting to the line like 6.5 times a game during his third year. Like he was fucking living at the free throw line. He was hitting a decent percentage of those two, higher percentage than RJ is hitting right now. The assists were nothing to speak of. He was averaging like 2.3 assists per game, playing obviously a lot of minutes. But guess what? On the year, RJ's at 2.9. So it's, we're not talking about someone who now, I think there was a different conversation to be had about how much do you put into pre-December 31st and then post-December 31st, because that I think has a lot to do with it. And also like to what you were saying, there is just a feel that you get from how RJ goes about his business where you feel like there is not going to be a regression. And if anything, there's going to be a progression. But like, I had to jump in there because like anybody who hears that and is like, oh, that's absurd. It's not absurd. Just go look, literally go look at any numbers you want to look at.
No. And I think there's a similarity in terms of there's a big difference between New York and Minnesota in terms of locale. I think there's a similarity in a desperation to finally have a guy to build around, which, neither team before, pre-Wiggins, it was Garnett. Pre-RJ Barrett, it was Ewing. I don't know who's the last guy they drafted who they built around, truly built around.
I think KP deserves to be in the discussion.
Yeah, that's fair. But either way, there's certainly and the fact, right, but how that ended, there's certainly a desperation from the franchise to just have a piece to start with, and they haven't had it. And I think that's going to drive some of the negotiation. And I think RJ probably knows it. His representation probably knows it, and they will. That's the business side of it. And it's not a home run. Like it's not simple. This isn't a player who has, even with this second half, who has proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that he is a max player. It's not guaranteed that it will look good in 2-3 years from now. There should be hesitation. And I, as much as I've enjoyed watching this version of RJ Barrett, and we've spoken a ton about his development and what's gone well and what's still a work in progress. He's still a flawed player. He's not, speak of Wiggins. Wiggins is a much smoother, more natural, explosive athlete than RJ is, much more. I mean, Wiggins was an elite athlete coming out of college. So, that was perhaps the thing that was most obvious about him. RJ's never going to have that kind of leaping ability, even the quick twitch stuff. I think Wiggins is superior. What RJ has is a relentlessness, a drive. Mm-hmm. And that's not just an attitude thing. It translates on the floor. Like, he's just going to keep coming at you. Defenses have to always account for the fact that he is coming downhill at you and you have to react.
And there's a value in having the guy that, like, come the fourth quarter. And look, I'm not saying RJ's always been great in fourth quarters, but you go and you look at his clutch stats in the last 5 minutes, and there really isn't anybody on the Knicks who's doing a whole lot better.
No, he's coming at you. Right. And I think he's already shown more as a playmaker than Wiggins did, even if the assist numbers are comparable
easily.
And that's a big part. Essential. Yeah. Yes. And so, I think that's probably the right starting point. And I don't know what number they'll come to, but I do think they will sign him. And if it's at the max and that's all that RJ will accept, maybe that's where they end up. But it's nerve wracking, although I will be happy to root for that guy for the next X amount of years once the deal is done.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were talking about the tank stuff. It's like you have your basketball core as the person who's been watching the sport for a very long time, and it's like, let's say they sign RJ to the max. In my core, I will be like, okay, it's a lot of money. It's probably too much money. I'm okay with it. I'm like legitimately okay with it. Right. I'm not worried about where that's going to go. Yeah, the only other name that I have in the piece is Jaylen Brown, who is, I think, where the Knicks would, if they had their druthers, would love to get him on that deal, which was essentially like 84% of the max for 4 years and not 5 years. So, it doesn't sound like a big drop, but it's like, it's a difference. And what I'm going to, I'll spoil my piece. If I'm Bill Duffy, who's RJ's agent, I'm going to hold up Jaylen Brown's 30-year stats of like 13 points a game and, like 1 point, whatever assists. I'm going to be like, yeah, that's not happening. So we'll see what happens. Right.
That's also an interesting contrast though, because Jaylen Brown could walk into Danny Ainge's office and say, here's what you got: an elite defensive wing. Yep. And a guy who's going to make catch and shoot threes. I don't remember what he shot that year, but if I remember, I think he was already shooting the ball well. Or it was
on catch. I looked it up earlier today. It's funny you asked. On catch and shoots, I think he was at it was close to 35%, but on good value.
Not great. Okay. I mean, so they had to bet on. They did have to bet on that a lither bit, but
they had to bet on it a little bit. Yeah.
You saw the outline of an elite 3-and-D player at the very least.
Yes.
And you're betting on further development. With RJ, it is a little more complicated. And obviously he's shown more as a primary player and he's gotten that opportunity to be that. But I don't think you can walk into Leon Rosal and say, you have an elite wing defender here and you have a guy who's going to be an elite catch and shoot player. I don't think you have either of those things.
Well, you've been on the catch and shoot. Actually, I'm not as worried about, but again, this gets so complicated because clearly this is not a guy at this point who foresees himself as a guy.
No, certainly not.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not what, but you've been on the defense more than others. I don't want to sit here and trash RJ's defense. It hasn't been great.
It hasn't. And it's certainly related to the increase in usage and minutes. The guy's carrying a crazy load right now. Crazy. But that said, it's not like I ever thought he was a great defender at any point, even when his usage was down. I think he's okay. I think he's better on the back line than he is at the point of attack. Yes. I think he's always been a little bit slow laterally. He gets beaten pretty often. He doesn't fight through screens great over, when he's guarding the point guard types. He's not Jaylen Brown defensively. He probably never will be Jaylen Brown defensively. And
by the way, Brown was already showing that aptitude by his third season.
Oh yeah. That was what stood out. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you're never going to worry about RJ on the defensive end, which I do think has real value. And say something to the fact that when he needs to get locked in, I and again, say it with me, he's only 21. Anyway, enough about RJ. I just wanted to get your overall thoughts on that. Let's talk about Immanuel Quickley.
Yes.
So what's our over under for All-Star games now for Quick? We're going 7.5, 9.5. Is he going to be on the top 100 list of?
It is still definitely 0.5, but I don't know. But I am certainly not counting it out that he reaches it.
It's just so much fun. I'm having such a blast watching him.
Yeah, it's I said I tweeted this out. I think had he never regained the shooting, I would have come out of the year and said that was a really healthy developmental year for Immanuel Quickley.
Yeah.
Now we need the shot to come back so that he becomes like a major offensive threat, like a really difficult to stop offensive player. The defense was there all year. And while I think it may be overrated a bit at times, because I even with the wingspan, I think there are certain matchups that are tough for him. But he's a really solid defender. He is right now, has been since his rookie year.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of a guy that small who doesn't get to the rim. Like if he's not going to shoot the ball great, then there's just a hard ceiling on what he can be. It starts with shooting the ball well with him. However, the strides that we saw from summer league on, that this guy is now beating people off the dribble, getting into the paint, making passes for secondary reads, tertiary reads, like that stuff wasn't there last year. Like last year, it was basically get the guy on my hip, floater or lob. He was not making any of these cross-court live dribble passes. He made one last night that was absurd that I never thought he could make. He made it to Obi in the corner. Obi missed.
Oh my goodness.
It was a ridiculous pass. He wasn't even in the paint yet. He threw it over two guys right in the pocket. Like that stuff is massive developmentally for him.
Benjy, he heard your text to me. I know. So one of our Michael Aaron, is he one of the Knicks Film School patrons? If he's not,
whatever he is, he tweeted at me. He's like, Donovan Mitchell. That reminded me of Donovan Mitchell, and I tweeted back. I'm like, I texted Macri that he was wrong to compare Quickley to Mitchell as a passer.
It's just in terms of passing.
Meanwhile, he just made a pass that looked exactly like the one that I was commenting on Mitchell in the first place. So like. Now the shootings come back and you're seeing a guy who can commandeer an offense and run and every possession down can make a play and get someone a shot or get himself a shot. I mean, it's massive. So you come out after a year of worrying, you come out the other side now and you say, oh no, this was actually a really successful sophomore year for Immanuel Quickley. And that's great. What else could you want?
I don't want much else. I had a stat in the newsletter, and was earlier this week about this. And I think he's maybe moved up from 22nd to 21st. I'm not going to sit here and count right now, but he's top 20 ish in pull up attempts this season, which are, basically self-created. Another way of saying like self-created 3-pointers. And his percentage on those shots is 35.2, which if you're listening, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't sound great. It's you have to mark down or mark up, whatever the terminology is for pull up. And if you go look at the volume leaders and pull ups this year, that figure, that 35+% is like right in the thick of like the best of the best guys. Now his degree of difficulty is not elite, but like, man, the shots he takes they're not easy shots.
Not at all. No, they're not easy at all. And when that's a real threat, just coming around the screen, stopping on a dime, the guy's now trailing you and you can pull up right into that three. He had a 4-point play like this last night in the first half where he got fouled from behind.
He's loving those because he gets a flex after it.
Yes, that makes you so hard to guard if that shot is the real deal. And it is, because he's been doing it for 2 years now. Like there's no way to guard that. You screen for the guy. You can screen higher even so that he's stepping into it, but it's still a three. You have to trail him. You can't go under. So you have to trail. The big's got to come up, because if you don't come up, he's pulling. So we saw him pull last night. When the big comes up, okay, now I'm hitting Jericho Sims or Mitch in the pocket, and well, even Mitch is making plays in the short roll now, apparently.
Beat us a bonus all of a sudden. There you go.
And if you don't feel like you have the three, okay, well, now you have the defender on your hip, you're entering the paint, you're causing rotations, and now all those passes are flaring out. But it all starts with that threat of that pull-up three. And when he's found it again, you're seeing the chain reaction where everything's opening up for him and the whole team as a result. And it's really eye-opening stuff. He is doing some, and the craziest thing is I never thought he'd be a guy that could just beat someone without a screen one-on-one into the paint. And he's doing that more and more. The last play of the game, the biggest play of the game last night, the Burks 3. Randle was on the elbow chilling, trying to ask for a post up because he thinks that's still a successful play.
Because reasons.
Yeah, no screen. Quick just beat his man straight to his right, got into the paint, calls the rotation, found Burks in the corner. Again, just like real development, encouraging stuff from Immanuel Quickley.
Yeah, I could sit here and talk about Quick all day. I will say that whenever I watch him do something really good or just have a really good game, I continue now. You're in my head about Jalen Brunson and like, man, is it worth it to spend that much money on and I'm not trying to say that they're exactly the same player, because they're not, but like, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a guy who's not really a high level starting point guard and is probably better suited for a 6-man role on an elite team, and you already have one of those guys who, and maybe I'm insulting him by calling Immanuel Quickley, a 6-man on a great team, because who the hell, like, look, you just talked about, you didn't see him doing these things at any point, and now he's doing them, and it's his second year. We know he's a worker. Like, I don't know where the ceiling on this kid's going to be. I'm just excited to watch. I'm very curious to see how their decision-making process reflects maybe their own internal opinions on where he could get to. Those are the two guys I really wanted to hit on. We could hit on a few more. I mean, Mitch and Sims, they've both been fun to watch. Any thoughts on those guys as we've been watching them the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think Sims struggled last night. I felt he had a less disciplined kind of rookie game, which will happen with rookie centers anywhere.
Positioning on pick and rolls, like stuff like that.
Pick and rolls,
against a tough team, by the way. Yeah,
he was out of position more often, and there is a tangible difference. While Jericho is a very good offensive rebounder, look, there aren't. Mitchell Robinson is one of a kind. If not, Steven Adams, I know, leads him in terms of offensive rebounding on the year, but he's elite. Mitchell Robinson is elite in the NBA. He's one of the best in the world at offensive rebounds. So as much as I think Jericho Sims will be a very good offensive rebounder and is already, look, there's a size difference, and Mitch is really unique. And so you feel that drop off. Like, Mitch really cleans up everything and Jericho cleans up some things. And so there, you do feel that. I will say Jericho and Thibs has empowered Sims in the, he's a little bit more versatile on the defensive end. It's not only drop. I mean, you're seeing him blitz, you're seeing him double, you're seeing him get to the level of the screen. And Mitch is more of a kind of a standard drop. Not that Mitch can't do those things, but he's a little bit slower of foot. Jericho's got really good foot speed. And I think Mitch is so good in drop that Thibs probably just wants to stay where it is. And Jericho's not quite there yet.
And versatility on the offensive end too, for as much as the putbacks and lobs are big. I think Sims is the better lob catcher. Is that a hot take? Is that like a...
I don't know if he's a better lob catcher. I will say he's better. He has better timing. Both he's a better screener, and I think he kind of anticipates the route and the timing of the roll better, so that it opens up for him a little bit more often.
That makes sense.
But Mitch, because of that, and it jumps so high, I think it's close. I think Mitch is really good as a lob catcher, but you're right to point to. A little bit more comfortable on the short roll, has shown a little power dribble game, Sims, a little floater game. And if you can increase the finishing radius by more than 3 feet, God, that makes a difference. It just opens up different pick and roll possibilities. You can throw a pocket pass instead of just a lob, and he catches the ball better than Mitch. So there are definitely pluses and minuses. I don't think Mitch is a better player right now, and the ceiling for Mitch is just higher because he's such a freakish athlete and his size is so ridiculous and overwhelming. But look, I think Sims is going to make this front office think about a little bit. It's a bit of, maybe if they were thinking about letting him go, I think it's a little bit of an easier decision.
Yeah. I still think the market is going to have so much to. Yeah, I agree.
And I think Sims either way should play a role. Like, I think he should be the backup center next year. I don't want to see Nerlens Noel anymore. I'll tell you that. So
you don't? That's a shocker.
Where is that guy, by the way?
Has he been? I feel bad. Even has he been on the bench?
I haven't seen his hair. I haven't seen him since he went out the 17th time that he got a different injury. So I don't know.
I feel like that what contract has aged worse, the Nerlens Noel contract or the Kemba Walker contract? It's a rhetorical question.
I would say, I think Noel. I would, because I blame Thibs for making that a high risk contract to Kemba, even though it shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
But I totally understood where that was coming from, the Kemba signing. Yeah. The second they signed Noel, I said, you can't find a better use for $10 million, whatever they gave him over 2,
No, it was like $9 a year for 2 years, essentially.
It was I mean, like and everyone was telling me it's movable, whatever. It's just a couple. I'm like, okay, but you can find a different movable guy that's better than Nerlens Noel. Like I didn't understand.
They loved the continuity. I mean, look, he was really good last year. He was really good.
I defend him. And even when he played the couple of games he played this year, he made an impact in several, you know, and I know the hands are bad. He's a punchline and I get it.
You're not wrong though.
He's an impactful player. I just don't understand. I didn't understand giving him as much money for 2 years as they did at the time.
Yeah, no, because you could find guys like that. Yeah, I'll be curious to see what more and more. I'm like, hey, why not keep both? It really is going to come down to the number and how comfortable they are with whatever that number's going to have to be. Okay, we're nearing the end of our time together, which means we have to, we have to talk. We have to talk about. I wish there was a rule on this podcast. We don't talk about Julius, and we should make a little song about it, and maybe it could win an Oscar. Although that song did not win the Oscar, right? It did. I think that the No Time to Die song won the Oscar. I don't know if you're a movie. Did you watch the Oscars?
No, I did not watch the Oscars.
Do you know what happened at the Oscars?
I'm aware of what occurred and all of the thousands of tweets and memes.
There you go.
Other things that came out of it, but I did not watch a second of the Oscars.
Well. Look, there's a lot of
Andrew.
There's a lot of Knicks fans who would like to walk onto center court, and Will Smith, Julius Randle. I mean, and I purposely haven't brought up Obi because, like, you know, I do think Obi has to do a little bit with like the Julius conversation, and obviously the Julius conversation is not about this year; it is about moving forward and like. I think really just for every Knicks fan, they have to kind of assess their own internal desperation level. A certain well-known Knicks fan, who I will leave nameless, tweeted or DM me earlier today, and he's like, we've reached ham sandwich time, which is to say, get a ham sandwich for Julius Randle. It doesn't matter. Just move on from him. And I do think Obi's recent play, I've been very encouraged by it. I do think that it should influence the discussion to a certain extent, but for me, it really does more come down to Julius. Where are you at right now with this beautiful human being?
Yeah. So as I basically at the time that we're speaking, there were unsubstantiated reports from WFN. I don't know if you saw it. So I don't know. I don't want to lower the reporting standards on here.
I have not heard anything myself.
Yeah, but I will say that like
break some news.
Would it shock me? Like Carton, he's not, again, he was like in jail like 5 months ago, but the guy basically said unsubstantiated. I heard that after the game, they saw Julius walk off the court like as if he had lost the championship, and instead of celebrating with his teammates and threw the ball, and the team, someone representative, I don't know who, didn't say, walked over to him in the locker room, and Julius basically said that he wants out, that he's had enough. They didn't feel the support of the front office during a difficult time. He thought the offense would run through him more. Whatever. I have no idea if this is true, and it hasn't been reported by anyone who I give much credence to, but wouldn't shock me. Makes sense based on what I've been watching.
Wait, hold on. Forget not shock you. That would be so in line with everything we have come to expect from this person.
Yeah.
Not player, person. From what we can tell from our vantage point. Our vantage point is not in his house, in the locker room, any of those things. But from what we can see, that would not, it would just fall so much.
And that's why I even bring it up, because if it seemed out of line with like what we were seeing, I wouldn't, but it makes a lot of sense. Like I wouldn't, if Begley confirmed it now, would you be surprised? No, not at all. No. And I think he's got to go. I think he's got to go.
I can't talk about this objectively anymore. I really can't. I've lost the ability to do it. And I feel bad saying that. I feel bad for Randle because I'm like, I take whatever the hell my role is in this Knicks verse. I take it seriously. And I'm like, I really do try to always be objective about this stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I just don't know that I could do it anymore. It's really become very difficult to imagine a world where I have to continue to root for this person.
And I think you can sense, you feel that as someone on the outside. Like imagine
Oh,
what his
God.
teammates are dealing with on a day-to-day basis with the roller coaster of emotions and I'm not saying he doesn't occasionally support his teammates in practice. He may be talking them up. I don't know, but I'm also convinced that he has not been a good teammate this year. We've seen enough to know that he has just been a roller coaster of emotions all year. He has not been outwardly supportive on the floor, especially when he's got like rookies out there, rookies like Jericho Sims, Quentin. How many times have you seen him put his arms out at a guy who missed the rotation, who's a rookie? Like, how about an arm around him? How about like, hey man, like, let's get him that. Like, it's just poor. It's outwardly poor leadership. Like, we don't know everything that goes on. I'm not comfortable saying he's a bad teammate. I am comfortable saying like, he certainly hasn't been a good one. Like, and I think we've seen enough to be able to say that. We've watched enough basketball games and seen enough good leaders, even ones that aren't like rah leaders, but like we've seen enough good leaders to know that this is not an example of that. And there's no question the team's been dealing with this distraction and this person, this cloud hanging over the room all year long. And that's not even mentioning the fact that he's just been awful. So
we're not talking about the basketball,
right? Before we get to the fact that he's been, with Russell Westbrook, maybe the worst high usage player in the league. It's him
and Russ,
and one who hasn't been able to adapt to lower the usage and be productive and be a supporting player, and be eventually willing. He'll have to be on a good team anyway. So like the idea that he can't do that is extremely discouraging. He had a 3-game stretch where it was like, oh, Julius, he's screening hard. He's rolling. He's making plays, quick decisions. I did a whole thread about it. I called it the Randle Sans. I was really excited about it. And then after it literally, it's gone. It's gone. It's purely elbow post-ups and dribbling the air out of the ball and not making defensive rotations. It's over.
I thought I was seeing things against the Bulls, Benjy. I'm like, there has to be something I'm missing. Maybe I do need to go watch the film 3 or 4 or 5 because I was watching the game and I'm like, and the plays I'm talking about where he'd be in the vicinity and it's just like, what are you looking at? What are you doing? I don't know.
And Jericho sprints out for no reason, probably, and the ball gets lobbed to Vucevic, and he's open for a layup. And instead of Randle saw it coming a mile away, he's already complaining about the bad rotation by Sims instead of doing something about it. He's standing right there. Like,
I knew the guy's a rookie.
He's a rookie. Foul the guy. Foul Vucevic. You're right there. You don't have to just watch him make a layup and then look at Sims like he made a mistake. I feel like I've defended Randle to the extent that and I know you're in the same boat where it's like, okay, we know how talented he is. We know he draws doubles. He still made some good passes yesterday. Like, it's not like he's not doing anything good out there, but there is now overwhelming evidence that he has not been a helpful player, that he is not allowing his teammate. He's not deferring when he needs to be deferring. He's not complimenting people by doing the little things on a basketball court that help make a team better. Yeah. He has to go. And I don't want to give up assets. I don't want to take on Russell Westbrook or anybody else that I don't want to see play basketball. But that said, Russ has 1 year left. Right. So kill me now if I have to watch him play a basketball game for the Knicks, but buy him out, sit him for a year. I don't care. Russ.
He can be the mascot. The Knicks have never had a mascot.
He can do fashion shows at halftime. I don't care. But I can't, this guy has just dragged this team down this year. And the coach has not done a good job helping to eliminate that issue. No, it's festered all year long. Yeah. He protects him in press conferences. I get that. I get that. But do you get him saying that shot clock violation? That was a great pass by Julius. No, that's too far, Tom.
That went over the line.
That's too far.
Somebody tagged me about that. We talked about Julius got 13 rebounds and he referenced a play. I actually admire him for lying through his teeth, but he knows. Tom's not stupid, but I don't know.
It's he's complimenting him for at least it was a dead ball turnover. Should they start complimenting him for live ball turnovers? I don't understand where this ends. No, he's just been awful. And the coach,
if that guy was wearing the opposite uniform, that would have been a great pass. That's what you guys are missing.
Yeah, he set a great screen for Quickley on that last play by standing at the elbow and asking for the ball. Really phenomenal stuff.
It was deception.
And you're seeing both Quickley and RJ have started rejecting his post-ups, which they never did last year. Last year, if Randle posted a switch, you threw it every single time. I've seen multiple plays now where they've faked towards the post and rejected it and made a play going the other way. And I'm sure Julius is not thrilled about that. And you know what? Sayonara. It's just been a year from hell with him. And I get the ham sandwich. Like you don't want to take on the worst contracts in the league, and you don't want to give up assets to get rid of him. I would not be upset if the Knicks did so. Obviously, to some, there's a limit. But I even if it was Russ for a year, if I didn't have to watch Russ every game next year, I'm not doing that. I'm quitting the game if I have to watch Russell Westbrook play every game. But if they brought him over and bought him out or sat him there to be a cheerleader or whatever, I don't care. But I think I'm okay with it. It's gotten to that point, which I hate saying, but it just is what it is.
We better sign you to a multi-year contract. You're like Jericho Sims, except with a much higher.
I'll cover Westchester full time. Maybe Deuce will be there. I live close by, and I'll watch Deuce in Westchester every game and never have to see Russell Westbrook.
No, I mean, but we don't have to continue on about this, but the scary thing is you look at the big contracts around the league, and the scary thing is there really aren't that many. Okay, you brought up Russ. Russ is the obvious one. You could throw.
Those contracts aren't even remotely similar, by the way. Russ is making 40.
It's
different level of bad.
No, so you're talking about all of a sudden Julius Randle and Evan Fournier, who guess what? The Lakers would walk to New York to.
Oh my God, they'd love Fournier. Would be great for them. For them. That's exactly the kind of player they need.
Exactly. And Julius with LeBron, I bet if there's one guy who could get him to, straighten up a little bit, I bet it's him. So they would do that in a heartbeat. But putting that aside, there really is not that many here's a funny one. You think Cleveland's going to trade an expiring Kevin Love for Julius Randle? Not in a million years would they bring Randle into that situation to play behind Evan Mobley and Jared Allen.
They have too many big guys anyway.
Yeah, they have too many big guys anyway. So you're going to have Julius Randle pouting there as a six. I'm just using an absurd example. There's really the one that I keep coming back to, and I have no idea if this would ever take place, but at least it has come to mind is Gordon Hayward. And I
would love that guy. I would love that guy even for the 35 games that he's going to play next year. I'd still love that guy. I'd still love that guy.
That's the name. And then the other team to look at, and I don't know who's asking for assets here back, but is Indiana, who has both Brogdon, who I know you like, I like too. They also have Buddy Hield now. Speaking of salaries that are not great, but again, Buddy Hield on your team is a lot more palatable than what we have to watch with this guy.
Elite shooting is elite shooting, even with all the other crap that he brings. He's one of the best shooters in the league.
Yeah. And then we get into the Tim Hardaway Jr. Portion of the discussion, which is where we are going to sign off because I am not about to have the
Hardaway three-peat. Bring him back, number 3.
That time's a charm. Come on, here we go.
I'd do that in a heartbeat too. Heartbeat.
Yeah,
I'm desperate. Look, and it's you never want my guess is that nothing happens because this front office is very asset conscious.
I don't know, man.
But that said, if these reports are true, I'm almost hoping that they're true. I almost hope that he forces their hand.
Oh, I would love it if they're true.
Because if he forces their hand and they're not going to get great value, and they may have to give something up or take something on that they don't want to do, what they don't want to, but I don't want to see that. It's been 3 years of the craziest roller coaster in the history of fandom, and I'm ready to get off the ride. Just ready.
I think I think there's a trade out there that they could find. Is it Eric Bledsoe?
Sure. Souped up Elfrid Payton, literally.
It's actually what Eric Bledsoe made 2 all defense teams in his career. How about that guy? Amazing. Oh, goodness. Yes, that's where we're at. We're going to end this with Julius Randle for Eric Bledsoe. Okay. Benjy, I will say this. I think this is probably the last time we're going to talk during the season. As wonderful as it has been to see you emerge as, for my 2 cents, the best analysis out there on this team. It is, I will get personal for a moment and say it has been even nicer to just like meet you and get to know you and kind of become friends with you this year. So if nothing else, the 2021-22 Knicks, it did that. So I will always be thankful to them for that. Yeah, I don't know. Anything you want to plug, promote?
Likewise, man. Thank you for the opportunity and being able to come on. It's obviously done a lot for my exposure, and people have gotten to see me that, my stuff that hadn't before. And it's just, it's really cool to be part of Knicks Film School. I've enjoyed it a lot. So thank you. Things to plug. Yeah, I'm going to get a Knicks film thread out there on OB soon. On the last, 5-6 games that I haven't covered yet on a different film school. So he's my next project. I'm already in the works, got some good clips in there. Probably going to focus on his movement and how it kind of greases the wheels of the Knicks offense. He brings kind of a unique dynamic in that way. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to read your newsletter on the Wiggins RJ thing. I have a article that's been in like my archives that I've been like dying to write that's comparing the two players with some film. So maybe I'll use your newsletter as a jumping off point. So
I don't get into the weeds on it's a pretty straight, like couple of numbers here. And
yeah, there's some really cool things because Thibs obviously coached Wiggins at a similar time and actually ran very similar actions, identical actions to what he runs for RJ. So there's really a lot to kind of uncover there. And it's been in my drafts, like on the very early stages, but I will hopefully get that out for the Strickland at some point in the next couple of weeks if I can get to it. So those are my plugs. Thanks again, man, for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
The pleasure is all mine. And before we go, I am going to actually plug something that has nothing to do with the Knicks or actually basketball. And that is our friend Bernardo Zorowski's website, theinventionofdreams.com. I know you're not a movie buff, Benjy, but for anybody out there who does care about movies and maybe cares about what happened at the Oscars the other night, he had 2 great pieces post on his site. Again, theinventionofdreams.com. One of which is by friend of the pod and friend of Knicks Film School, Ray Marcano, in which he discusses the Will Smith incident. So if you're interested in reading some good, thoughtful writing on what happened the other night, like I said, at the Oscars, go over to theinventionofdreams.com. You will be supporting a Knicks fan. So that's always a good thing. That's it. That's all I have to say. Of course, if you like this pod, feel free to go ahead and give it a 5-star rating, drop a review, the whole thing. And we will be back with you for more fun and games very soon. Peace out.